watched a man I trusted for 3 years murder 7 soldiers in an underground pyramid buried beneath Antarctica. He arranged their bodies in a circle like offerings on an altar. When I asked him why, he smiled and said, "The pyramid chose me." Then he came for me with a knife. What terrifies me most isn't what happened in that frozen tomb. It's what followed me home. Welcome to Neurofear HQ. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because the stories on this channel will rewire your brain. Tap the bell for notifications so you never miss an upload. And drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from tonight. I read every single one. This is a story about what happens when something ancient and inhuman finds a willing servant among us. And it begins with a lie. They told us we were installing communications equipment. That was the first lie. There would be many more. The orders arrived on a cold Tuesday in October, hand-delivered by a major who refused to make eye contact. 24 hours to build a team. 48 hours to be airborne. Destination, a set of coordinates in Antarctica that corresponded to absolutely nothing on any map I could access. Radio silence once we landed. No specified return date. I was Colonel James Mitchell, and I'd spent 20 years in the United States Army learning to recognize when something smelled wrong. This mission reeked. But orders were orders. I assembled 24 soldiers at Fort Bragg and told them we were going to the bottom of the world. Most of them groaned. A few cursed under their breath. Private Walsh, who was barely 22 and still believed the Army made sense, raised his hand and asked how long we'd be gone. Classified, I told him, because the truth was worse than silence. We flew 18 hours to reach McMurdo Station. The base commander, a Navy captain with 2 decades of ice under his belt, pulled me aside while we refueled. "You sure about these coordinates, Colonel?" He showed me our destination on a satellite map. "That's deep interior. No research stations, no established routes, nothing." "Orders are orders, Captain." He nodded, but his expression said he'd seen enough classified operations to know when good men were being sent somewhere they wouldn't come back from. The final leg took us over an endless white wasteland. When the pilot set us down, I looked out the window at a landscape so empty it hurt. "This is it, sir. GPS matches your orders." I stared at nothing and wondered what we'd been sent to find. For 3 days, we installed legitimate radio equipment, high-frequency arrays designed for polar conditions. It all worked perfectly, which made the deception that much more insulting. Someone had built an elaborate cover story, complete with functional equipment and detailed specifications, all to disguise the real mission. The real orders arrived by encrypted transmission on day 4. A research satellite had detected an anomalous structure buried 30 meters beneath the ice at our exact position. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed it was artificial, large, and impossibly old. We were to excavate and investigate. The thermal imaging found it immediately, a massive signature stretching at least 200 meters across. Hayes, our tech specialist, stared at his screen and said something I'll never forget. "Sir, this thing is bigger than a football stadium." We started digging. When Walsh's shovel struck metal after hours of backbreaking work in sub-zero temperatures, the sound that rang up from the ice was like nothing I'd heard before. Not a clang exactly, more like a note. Like the structure was vibrating in response to being touched. I rappelled down to see the surface for myself. Dark metal, smooth as glass, warm to the touch despite 30 meters of ice above it. When my flashlight beam hit the surface, the light didn't bounce back. It was absorbed, swallowed, like the metal was drinking it. 2 more hours of excavation revealed the shape. A pyramid, at least 60 meters tall, sealed inside Antarctic ice for a span of time I couldn't begin to calculate. Thompson, my second in command and my closest friend for 15 years, looked at the exposed surface and said what we were all thinking. "Jim, what the hell did they send us to find?" The entrance was a rectangular void cut into the north face. No door, no mechanism, just an opening that led into absolute darkness. I took 3 men inside, Connell, Rodriguez, and Walsh. The corridor was 3 meters wide, perfectly straight, and covered floor to ceiling with carved symbols. Not hieroglyphs, not runes, not anything from any civilization that has ever existed on this planet. Geometric patterns that seemed to rearrange themselves in your peripheral vision. When you turned to look directly at them, they were still. Look away and they moved. The air inside was warm and dry. After 30 meters of ice, this place should have been a freezer. Instead, it felt like a climate-controlled museum. We found the first chamber 50 meters in, 30 meters across. Domed ceiling lost in darkness above our flashlight beams, and artifacts, dozens of them, objects made of that same dark metal, spheres that were too perfect, cubes that seemed to have more than 6 faces, tools shaped for hands with too many fingers. "No dust," Rodriguez whispered. "Nothing's degraded. It's like time doesn't exist in here." We spent 3 hours documenting what we found. Every surface told a story in a language that might never have been spoken aloud. A language written for minds that didn't think the way ours do. When we returned to the surface, the sun hadn't moved. 24 hours of daylight in Antarctica. No way to tell how long we'd actually been underground. That disorientation was just the beginning. The pyramid went deep. 6 levels below the entrance at minimum, connected by corridors that branched and twisted in ways our mapping software couldn't properly render. Each level contained more chambers, more artifacts, more of those impossible symbols that moved when they thought you weren't watching. I established a routine. Teams of 4, 8-hour shifts, check-ins every 2 hours, strict documentation protocols. It felt professional, organized, safe. It was none of those things. The changes started small. Rodriguez began pausing mid-sentence during briefings, staring at walls like he was listening to a conversation none of us could hear. Hayes developed a compulsive need to check his watch, sometimes every 30 seconds. Walsh started looking over his shoulder constantly, convinced someone was following him through the corridors. I told myself it was stress, isolation, artificial light and recycled air playing tricks on exhausted minds. But I was lying to myself, because I felt it too. That creeping sensation that the pyramid was aware of us, watching, learning. The way my dreams had started featuring corridors I'd never explored and symbols that spelled out messages I couldn't quite remember when I woke. Then Walsh disappeared. He was on perimeter patrol, routine sweep through mapped chambers. Check-in at 14:30, all clear. 1,500 hours. Silence. Thompson and I found his equipment in chamber 12. Radio, scanner, notebook. All dropped like he'd been plucked from existence mid-step. No blood, no struggle, no footprints leading away, nothing. "People don't just disappear," Thompson said, but they did. Because 2 days later, Hayes vanished from a secured guard post. Single entrance, clear sight lines. his rifle propped against the wall, safety on, full magazine, personal effects arranged neatly beside it, wallet, watch, a photograph of his girlfriend. Like he'd decided to leave this world and wanted to make sure his things were found. I locked the mission down. Buddy system. 15-minute check-ins, armed escorts everywhere. None of it mattered. Over the following weeks, 5 soldiers vanished. Each disappearance followed the same impossible pattern. No evidence, no explanation. Just empty space where a trained soldier had been standing moments before. The team fractured. Fear turned professional soldiers into paranoid strangers. Accusations flew in whispered conversations. Men who'd trusted each other with their lives now watched each other with suspicion and barely concealed hostility. And through all of it, Sergeant Connell remained perfectly, unnaturally calm. That's what the others noticed first. While everyone else deteriorated, while eyes went hollow and hands developed tremors and voices cracked with barely suppressed terror, Connell stayed steady. Same professional demeanor, same measured tone, same green eyes that took in everything and gave back nothing. He volunteered for extra shifts, spent hours alone in the pyramid's deepest chambers studying symbols and artifacts with an intensity that bordered on obsession. When others confronted him about the disappearances, he responded with a logic that was infuriating precisely because it made sense. "What's more likely?" he asked the group one evening. "That I'm somehow making grown soldiers vanish without a trace, without blood, without sound, without anyone seeing anything, or that this place is doing it?" "Then what is this place doing?" Walsh demanded. "Protecting itself." Connell's voice was soft, almost reverent. "The same way it's been protecting itself for thousands of years." I should have seen it then. The way he spoke about the pyramid, not with fear or academic curiosity, but with something closer to devotion, like a priest describing his cathedral, but I was too busy losing soldiers to notice that one of them had already been lost in a different way. Thompson was the one who figured it out. My oldest friend. The man who'd pulled me out of more bad situations than I could count. He vanished from a guard post he'd volunteered for, and the search produced nothing. Just his rifle and his personal effects, arranged with the same eerie neatness as all the others. But Thompson left me something the others hadn't. A journal hidden beneath his sleeping bag. The final entry read, "Someone's given in to it completely. I can see it in their eyes. That bright, feverish look, like they're listening to something the rest of us can't hear. They're not fighting it anymore, they're helping it. The pyramid doesn't just want to be found, it wants to be fed, and it's found the perfect way to do it. If something happens to me, check the sealed chamber behind the door. The answers are there, but be careful who you trust. The pyramid has already chosen its servant." I read those words in Thompson's empty quarters, and I understood. Not everything, but enough. The circular door had been our obsession for weeks. 4 meters across, set into a dead-end wall 3 levels down. 7 concentric rings of symbols that rotated independently. A combination lock built by minds that thought in dimensions we couldn't perceive. I spent 3 days learning its rhythm. Each ring moved at a different speed. The outermost completed a rotation every 4 hours. The innermost spun once every 20 minutes. But the movements weren't random. There were moments of alignment, brief windows where specific symbols across all 7 rings clicked into position simultaneously. It happened once every 18 hours and 43 minutes. I waited, alone, armed with an ice pick, and the growing certainty that I was about to find something terrible. At 14:27 hours, 7 symbols aligned with an audible snap. The door didn't open, it ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next, empty air and a chamber beyond. I stepped through and found my soldiers. 7 bodies arranged in a circle on the floor of a chamber 10 meters across. Thompson, Walsh, Hayes, Rodriguez, Martinez, 2 others whose faces I'll carry to my grave. Each one showed signs of precise, deliberate violence. Stab wounds angled toward vital organs, blunt force trauma to skulls, defensive wounds on hands and forearms where they'd tried to fight back. But their bodies were pristine. No decomposition, no decay. Skin still flexible, blood still red. The chamber had preserved them in the exact state of their deaths, like specimens in a museum display. On the far wall, carved into alien metal, someone had written in English, "They saw too much. They had to be stopped." And below it, "You're next." I heard him before I saw him. Footsteps, measured, unhurried. The sound of someone who believed they had all the time in the world. Connell appeared in the doorway, his lean frame backlit by the corridor's dim glow. Those green eyes moved across the 7 covered forms without surprise, without horror, without anything at all. "You found them. How long have you known?" "Since before we landed." He stepped into the chamber. "The pyramid called to me during the flight, showed me what needed to be done. You murdered 7 soldiers. I removed 7 witnesses." He pulled a combat knife from behind his back. "The pyramid contains knowledge that would destroy our species if it reached the wrong hands. It needed a guardian, someone willing to do what was necessary." "You're insane." Thompson said the same thing. Connell's smile was thin and cold. Right before I put the knife through his chest, he moved fast, combat trained, mission focused, completely without mercy. The knife opened a gash across my shoulder before I could react. I grabbed the ice pick from my belt and swung wild. The point scraped his ribs. Not deep enough. He slammed his knee into my stomach. I doubled over, gasping, vision going gray at the edges. "The pyramid chose well," he said, raising the knife above my head. "You've been a good soldier, Colonel. But your service ends here." I threw my weight forward. We crashed to the floor between the bodies of my dead men, rolling, grappling. His knife found my chest, drawing a line of fire from collarbone to sternum. My blood hit the metal floor and seemed to be absorbed, swallowed the same way the walls swallowed light. He came at me one final time, the knife aimed at my heart. I waited until the last breath. Then I drove the ice pick into his neck. Connell's eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but only blood came out. The knife fell from his fingers and clattered against metal that had witnessed violence before. Perhaps many times before. He collapsed among the soldiers he'd killed. The 8th body in the circle. The surviving members of my team found me unconscious beside Connell's body. They sealed the pyramid, buried the entrance under tons of ice, activated every emergency beacon in our inventory. The official report listed 8 casualties from structural collapse during routine excavation. Equipment failure. Tragic accident. Nothing more. At Walter Reed Army Medical Center, they stitched my wounds and started asking questions I couldn't answer honestly. Different agencies, different interrogators, all wanting to know the same thing. What did you really find down there? Communications equipment, I told them, radio towers, ice. They didn't believe me. I could see it in their eyes. But the story held, and eventually they let me go with a stack of non-disclosure agreements and a desk job reviewing supply manifests at the Pentagon. Safe, quiet, far from the ice, but not far enough. The dreams started my first night at Walter Reed and never stopped. Every night I walk those corridors again. The symbols move freely now, rearranging into patterns that almost make sense. Messages written in languages older than stone. Instructions for technologies that could remake the world or end it. And in the deepest chambers, past rooms I never found when I was conscious, Connell waits for me. The ice pick still in his neck. Blood still wet on his collar. That thin smile still curving his lips. It's not finished with us, Colonel. I wake up sweating, checking locks, looking out windows at empty streets. 3 months after we left Antarctica, Hayes died. Single car accident. Drove into a bridge abutment at 60 miles per hour on a straight, empty road at 2 a.m. They called it suicide. But Rodriguez told me Hayes had been having the dreams too, the same corridors, the same symbols, the same voice calling him back. Martinez disappeared a week later. His apartment emptied overnight. No forwarding address. No notice to his command. Just gone. The way people go when the pyramid decides it wants them back. Rodriguez called me after Martinez vanished. His voice was shaking. "Sir, how many of us are left?" I counted in my head. 4. 4 survivors out of 24. "Stay visible," I told him. "Stay around. People. Don't be alone." "Sir, the dreams, they're getting worse. The symbols, I can read them now. They're instructions. They're telling me to come back." "Don't listen." "I'm trying, sir, but it's getting harder." The line went dead. I haven't heard from Rodriguez since. One morning last week, I woke up and found a message on my bathroom mirror, written in condensation that shouldn't have been there, in handwriting that wasn't mine. "The door is still open." I wiped it away with a towel, told myself it was a hallucination. Side effects from the medication. Stress. PTSD. An irrational explanation. But when I looked at my hands, there was dark soil under my fingernails, and I live on the 4th floor of a concrete apartment building. We sealed the entrance. We buried the evidence. We signed documents promising never to speak of what happened beneath the ice. But Thompson was right. The pyramid doesn't just want to be found. It wants to be fed. And Connell was right about something too, though it sickens me to admit it. The pyramid chooses its servants. And it is patient. It has waited beneath the ice for millennia. It can wait a little longer. The question that keeps me awake at night. The one I can't answer no matter how many locks I check or how many pills I take, is simple. Was Connell the last servant it chose? Or was he just the first one I noticed? If you made it to the end of this story, you're braver than most. Hit that like button for NeuroFear HQ. Subscribe and turn on those notifications, because the next story I have for you goes even deeper into the dark. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from tonight. Tell me if you've ever dreamed of places you've never been. And if you wake up tomorrow with dirt under your fingernails and a message on your mirror, don't wipe it away. Read it carefully. It might be the only warning you get.